Assalamu alaikum. Hope so you are all doing well. Alhamdulillah, I am also fit and fine. Today we are going to discuss and elaborate some concepts, and today we are here to discuss some of new points that are the specialty of Joseph sorry James Joyce's writing, his art of writing, or what are the special features that he uses while writing his novels. So, before in my previous lecture, I have discussed some of his points, his style of writing, and his conception of different techniques regarding to his writing. So now today we come with some new points. Uh, Let us discuss some of his new era of writings. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we are going to discuss about James Joyce's conception of language, but as soon as I discuss this conception, I would request my viewers to subscribe my channel and to hit the like button below, and don't forget to comment if you want to write something, if you want to comment me something, then you people are welcome to comment. Your comments would emphasize me and encourage me to come with some new points, with some new concepts, with authentic techniques. Now today, James Joyce's conception of language. Here is its introduction. James Joyce, as well as his famous hero Stephen, are both extraordinarily concerned with language, especially with words and their sounds. It has been suggested that this have been because of Joyce's defective eyesight, which made sounds much more important to him than sights. It is true that there are more auditory images than visual images in his writings, whereas it is not too safe to identify Joyce too closely with Stephen in so far as the general aesthetic theories of the two are concerned. It is quite proper to regard their view on the question of language to be identical. The portrait and Ulysses embody some of the most significant experimentations with the language of literature in modern times. Interest in language. Joseph Prescott finds a steady development in Joyce's view of language. He believes that the writings of Joyce show a progression from an early interest in words through a mature use of them to the excessive fondness of old age. In spite of variation from one word to another, the development is not always consistent and steady. Sometimes there is a reversion to a former phase, sometimes an advance into a future phase. The direction, however, is unmistakable. Joyce and his character. According to Joseph Prescott, the chief characters of Joyce represent their author in their interest in and attitude to language. He observes Joyce's writing give themselves readily to such analysis because Stephen Dedalus, the unnamed narrator of the first three studies, is Dubliner, the chief characters in a portrait of the artist as a young man, and one of the chief characters in Ulysses is James Joyce's recollection in tranquility. The danger of indiscriminately identifying even an autobiographical character with its creator is obvious. Usually, the author and the character, although two aspects of the same personality, are still two aspects. In words, however, it is not only unwarrantable to distinguish the experiences of the two. It is impossible. Joyce has transformed his life into his art, and since far away the most revered thing in his life. is the word. He has put into his art not only his use of words but also his experiences with them and his speculations on these experiences. Stephen and language. Stephen Dedalus is seen to have a keen interest in words and their meaning. In early childhood, when Stephen was being taught the law of the apology, words already formed patterns in his mind. His mother said, "Oh, Stephen will apologize. Apologize." As Dante said, "Oh, if not, the eagles will come and pull out his eyes. Pull out his eyes, apologize, apologize, pull out his eyes, apologize, pull out his eyes, pull out his eyes, apologize." Means the conception of apologize. Once you made some punishment, then it's obvious for that very particular person to apologize for his sins, because if he had not, then the eagles will come and pull out their eyes. So the conception of uh, sin and punishment, it seems very obvious in this novel. Reaction to sound. Stephen's reaction is primarily to sound. This is probably true for most of us. Words begin as sounds and end as symbols. While we are growing into articulations, gradually the representative quality of words supersedes in importance their significance as sound. We cease to trouble ourselves about their success as echoes and speak not so much in words as by means of word, but this by continue to be sensitive to their sound, find in them experiences that shed light on their accepted dictionary meanings, and so to enrich their meanings with the color of his personality. At first they stir his memory. That was a belt round his pocket. And belt was also to give a fellow a belt. A boy at Clongowes is called the prefect Suck, and Stephen ponders. Suck was a queer word, but the sound was ugly. Once he had washed his hands in the lavatory of the Wicklow Hotel, and his father had pulled the stopper up by the chain after, and the dirty after went down through the hole in the basin, and when it had all gone away, gone down slowly. The hole in the basin had made a sound like that, suck only louder. And a little later, baffled by the equivocal attitude of his schoolfellows to kissing one's mother, Stephen remembered his mother put her lips on his cheek. Her lips were soft and they wetted his cheek, and they made a tiny little noise kiss. Sound and emotion. Joyce depicts through Stephen how the sounds of words may fascinate a person even before the words themselves produce any emotions. The sounds of words fascinate the future artist before they breed in his emotion. The prefect of studies is called Dolan, and to Stephen, fresh from a hot, burning, stinging, tingling encounter with them, it was like the name of a woman who washed clothes. As the boy grows older, words come to fill him with strange sensations. The age of the narrator in the first stories of Dubliner is not clear, so that one cannot correlate exactly his reactions there with those in the portrait, but the same preoccupation is recorded. Every night, as I gazed up at the window, I said softly to myself the word paralysis. It had always sounded strangely in my ears, like the words Nomen in the Euclid and the word simony in the Catechism. Later development. Stephen's interest in language continues through his adolescence and youth. Similar thoughts and feelings move the boy throughout his adolescence. It is noteworthy, however, that his artistic gearings are almost completely submerged during one phase of his religious experience. In all the sections of the portrait describing Stephen during the retreat, there is only a single remark on a single word, and that comes so near the beginning of the retreat that it seems to be no more than an isolated instance of preservation. The incubus of sin crushes every impulse of the artist, stifling, shriveling. His soul traversed a period of desolation in which the sacraments themselves seem to have turned into dried up sources. Only after the deflation of his emotional religiosity induced in him by the retreat does Stephen the fearful Jesuit, as he was later to be called, give way to that last, the artist. After a violent swing toward faith, there is an equally violent rebound in the direction of the disbelief, and Stephen passes beyond the challenge of centuries who had stood as guardians of his boyhood and had sought to keep him among them that he might be subject to them and serve their ends. Play on words. With his entry into the university, Stephen gives full rein to his artistic inclinations. He plays on words as on the strings of a delicate instrument. He listens intently for all the overtones. He lives almost exclusively in words of word sensations. He drew forth a phrase from his treasure and spoke it softly to himself. A day of dappled sea-born clouds. The phrase and the day and the scene harmonized in accord. Cold words, was it their colors? He allowed them to glow and fade, hue after hue, sunrise gold, the russet and green of apple orchards, azure of waves, the grey finked fleece of clouds. No, it was not their color. It was the poise and balance of the period itself. Did he then love his rhythmic rise and fall of words better than their associations of legend and color? Or was it that being as weak of sight as he was shy of mind, he drew less pleasure from the reflection of the glowing sensible world through the prism of a language many colored and richly storied them than from the contemplation of an inner world of individual emotional mirrored perfectly in a lucid supple periodic prose. The young artist is groping for the precise source of the power which words wield over him, but it eludes him. He can only foreknow, as matter of fact, that at various stages of his morning walks across the city, the spirits of Hampton and Newman and Cavalcante and Ibsen will rise in his soul, even with emotion after its kind. Disillusion. The last stage in Joyce's attitude to language is tinged with disillusion. In this phase in the development of Joyce, gradually a mysterious unrest is seeped into his soul, poisoning his pleasure with disillusion. Words became empty of instantaneous sense until every mean sharp legend bound his mind like the words of a spell, and his soul shriveled up, sighing with age as he walked on a lane of dead language. Slowly and vaguely, the young Dedalus has become aware of an insufficiency in the language. He suffers the blank misgivings of a creature moving about in the world not realized, accepted forms of expression no longer represent life for him fully, and the feeling is heightened by the fact that Stephen's education in his most formative years had been steeped in a forgotten past. It wounded him to think he would never he but a shy guest at the feast of a world's culture, and that the monkish learning in terms of which he was striving to forge out an aesthetic philosophy was held no higher by the age he lived in than the subtle and curious jargons of heraldry and falconry. Again, the single word takes hold of him when he discusses with the English Dean of Studies. He used of tundish. The young Irishman envies his instructor for having the tradition of English as a heritage, while for himself it is only an acquisition. His language, so familiar and so foreign, Stephen considers, will always be for me an inquired speech. I have not made us accepted the words. My voice holds them at bay. My soul frets in the shadow of his languages. Conclusion. Stephen Prescott concludes that Joyce's interest in an experiment with language culminates in Ulysses. As a student of world, Joyce is at one with Stephen, allowing for the adolescent tragedy with which the young man laments his fate. It is evident that Stephen Joyce did experience dissatisfaction with accepted forms of speech from an early period in his linguistic career. He himself probably never dreamt to uh, what lengths that unrest would go, nor could he have foreseen that he was himself to go through a process of growth in the language of creation and ultimately of dissolution. In the portrait, he is still moving in a world of conventional language. His interest in its world revolves chiefly about their onomatopic, onomo sorry associations and their effect upon his spirit. He is now too pondering the notion of an aesthetic. He is groping towards the system that is to inform his art with a rigidity which finally undoes it. Closely allied to his speculations about words, Joyce's theory of art dominates his use of them in his best work, Ulysses. The portrait describes Joyce's linguistic childhood, in which he is gathering strength for Ulysses, the production of his manhood. Now Joyce has God created anew the world with Jehovah to raise Cain with the language. This is the cover book of Ulysses by James Joyce. The most dangerous book, the better for James Joyce's Ulysses. This seems very authentic, and the book cover page, it seems contain a uh, lot of uh, words. So lot of gems. Now let us discuss some other new point. Now this part is the most important part, because here we are going to discuss the gist of the novel, that are the person and the places on whom the whole novel is constructed or structured, or on them whom whole novel is based. And because without characters and place there is no novel or no writings at all. So here are some the list of some persons and places that are mentioned, and that on whom the whole novel is based. First of all, there is Stephen Dedalus. He is the hero of the novel. Simon Dedalus, Stephen's father. He is the father of Stephen. Stephen Dedalus. May Dedalus, Stephen's mother, Mercy Dedalus, Stephen's younger brother. Uncle Charles, a relative who lives with the family until his death. Aunt Dante. Mrs. Riordan walks out of the Christmas dinner in chapter 1. Katie, Maggie, and Bodie, Stephen's sister. Mr. Cassie John, a guest at the Christmas dinner who defends the Irish patriot Parnell. Eileen Vance, Stephen's childhood sweetheart. Later in the novel, Stephens refers to an Emma and writes poetry to E.C., but we are not able to distinguish between them. Father Arnold, the Latin teacher at Clongowes, who later appears as the retreat master in chapter 3. He conducts a retreat at Belvedere College, which Stephen attends. Next is our Father Dolan, the prefect of studies at Clongowes, who punishes Stephen in the Latin class with a pendy bat without reason. Father Conmy, director at Clongowes, whom Stephen goes to see in the castle to report about his unjust punishment. Brother Michael, take care of Stephen while he is sick in the infirmary at Clongowes. Mr. Glean, Mr. Barrett Paddy, Mr. Harford, and teachers refer to briefly at Clongowes Board College. Fleming, Stephen class fellow, who is also punished by Father Dolan in his Latin class at Clongowes. Jack Layton, head of Lancaster team, which competes with Stephen team, the Yorkist in class contest at Clongowes. And Nasty Roche questions Stephen about his family and his old last name at Clongowes. Well, the rough student at Clongowes who pushes Stephen in a ditch of dirty water and causes him to become ill. H.E. Stephen's companion in the infirmary at Clongowes. His father is a horse owner. Aubrey Mills, Stephen's companion at Black Rock before he enters Belvedere College. Mike Flynn, Stephen's track trainer during the summer at Black Rock. Vincent Heron, classmate who shares the leadership of the school with Stephen at Belvedere College. Valleys, Vincent Heron's friend who appears on the night of the school play at Belvedere College. Bertie Talon, a boy who takes part in the play at Belvedere College. Boland, a classmate at Belvedere College whom Stephen calls a dunce. Nash, another classmate at Belvedere College whom Stephen calls an idler. Bertie, Boland, and Nash beat Stephen. Mr. Tate, the English master at Belvedere College. Johnny Cashman, an old friend of Simon Dedalus, whom they meet on a trip to Cork. Dean of Studies, an English Jesuit priest with whom Stephen discusses philosophy at University College Dublin. Cranley, Stephen's closest friend and confidant at University College Dublin. Lynch, a student at University College Dublin who takes long walks with Stephen, during which Stephen explains his aesthetic philosophy. Devon, the peasant student and staunch Irish nationalist at University College Dublin. McCann, the students at University College Dublin who heeds the singing of the petition for social equality and world peace. And Temple, the gypsy student at University College Dublin who admires Stephen's knowledge and hates Cranley. And now I am going to discuss about the places that are mentioned in the novel. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. The castle, the building at Clongowes Wood College where the Jesuit priest lived. The rector also had his office in this building. Stephen visited to it, explains his assumptions from studies when his glasses were broken and he was unjustly beaten by the Latin teacher. Cork, a large city on the southern coast of Ireland. Stephen's father and some property there and took Stephen along with when he went there to dispose of it. Queen College in Cork, where Stephen's father had studied. Stephen was shown round this place when he accompanied his father on a journey there. Although called a college, it was a school in reality. Clongowes Wood College, the Jesuit school, which was the first one Stephen attended. He had to discontinue when his family could no longer afford the expenses of this costly institution. Belvedere College, the second school attended by Stephen, or Dublin, the capital of Ireland. Stephen studied at University College Dublin. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Classical, religious, and literary allusions. Here, as we have studied different techniques of his writing, we also guessed while reading and listening to this very particular introductory phase of Sir Joyce's writing, that he has uses different allusions that are based on a religious and he first of all Daedalus that are classical and religious at the same time. So, first of all, his classical allusions. Daedalus, architect of ancient Crete, who built the labyrinth at the orders of King Minos. Ultimately, he and his son were imprisoned there. When they fell in disfavor with the king, he told his son that the only way to escape from the labyrinth was by air. He made two pairs of wings for this purpose, with the help of which the father and the son made good their escape from the labyrinth. The son Icarus ignored the warning of the father not to fly too high because the heat of the sun might melt the glue with which the wings were fixed, with the result that the wings came off and he fell into the sea and lost his life. Stephen Dedalus' surname is derived from that of this mythic hero. In the novel, he is also referred to as a famous artificer. Next is Aristotle, famous Greek philosopher. Stephen's aesthetic theory is partly influenced by the views of Aristotle as expressed in the Poetics and the Rhetoric. His favorite theologian expressed in the Poetics and the Rhetoric. His favorite theologian and thinker, Saint Aquinas, was a follower of Aristotle. Now, religious allusion. Capuchin, the name of Franciscan order of monks. Capuchin, the monk to whom Stephen confessed about his sexual experience, belonged to this order. Catechism, a handbook of questions and answers used for imparting instruction in the Christian religion. Confiteor, a Latin word meaning I confess. It constitutes a formal prayer recited by the Roman Catholics during a Mass. Eucharist, consecrated bread and wine used in the service of the Holy Communion. Jesuit, a member of the Roman Catholic religious order named the Society of Jesus. It was founded by Ignatius Loyola in 1534. The schools at which Stephen studied were run by Jesuits. Limpo, a region believed by some Christian theologians to be the abode after death of unbaptized children and of virtuous people who lived before Jesus. Stephen and his class fellows discuss in chapter 5 whether this place exists. Retreat, a period during which one withdraws from everyday affairs and undertakes religious contemplations. There is a retreat at Belvedere College in which Stephen participates. Saint Francis Xavier, a Spanish Jesuit missionary of the 16th century who preached Christianity in the East. He is the patron saint of Belvedere College, where a retreat is observed in this honor. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, another Spanish priest who established the religious order called the Society of Jesuits. Saint Thomas Aquinas, a Dominican monk and theologian, belongs to the 13th century. Stephen's favorite philosophers. Solidarity of Blessed Virgin Mary, a religious and charitable association at Belvedere. Stephen is the head of this association, which meets on Saturdays and says prayers to the Blessed Mary. Literary allusions, kinesis, a Greek term meaning movement used by Stephen to express the function of productive art. A fine art must not be kinetic. For example, it should not produce an emotion like loathing or longing. Stasis, a Greek term denoting stationariness, used by Stephen as a statement of the function of fine art. which must only satisfy the aesthetic sense of the beholder and must have no order other than terror, one of the terms in the English translation of Aristotle's statement of the effect of tragedy. Stephen defines it as the feeling which arrests the mind in the presence of whatever is grave and constant in human suffering and unites it with the secret cause, pity. The second term in Aristotle's statement of the function of tragedy, defined by Stephen as the feeling which arrests the mind in the presence of whatsoever is grave and constant in human suffering and unites it with the human sufferer. Motif, a word, image, or idea which occurs repeatedly, serving to give unity to a work of art and also to point the themes and controlling ideas of a literary work. Another term in Stephen's aesthetic, defined by him as the first formal aesthetic relation of part to part in any aesthetic whole. Sorry, this is rhythm. Rhythm, another term in Stephen aesthetic, defined by him as the first formal aesthetic relation of part to part in any aesthetic whole, or of an aesthetic whole to the part or parts or of any part to the aesthetic whole of which it is part. Villanelli, a poem consisting of 3-line stanza with a last stanza of 4 lines. Stephen writes such a poem in honor of E.C. Cardinal Newman, a Victorian theologian and writer regarded by Stephen as the greatest prose stylist. Charles Stewart Parnell, Irish Statements and Patriot, the subject of a heated discussion at the Christmas dinner in the house of the Douglases. Parnell was denounced by some of his followers because of his connection with the married woman. Lord Byron, famous English romantic poet, held by Stephen to be the greatest English poet, a belief which cost him a beating from his classmates. Lord Tennyson, great Victorian poet, acutely disliked by Stephen, and Michael Davitt, Irish journalist, founder of the Irish Land League. Stephen's aunt had token of this patriot. Now this is it for today. Next we shall come with some new energetic points regarding with this novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. Now it is the end of today's lecture. Hope so you like my video. At the end, I would like to request from my viewers to subscribe my channel, and if they like my video, then comment me in the comment section and like and press the like button in the like section as well. So today I am going to end with the hope that you all people might remember me in your good prayers. Until then, Allah Hafiz.